Gervais
Here.
and Tom Philbin.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Sorry for the late start. I would like to recognize the live stream available at www.westwood.k12.ma.us/live that provides real-time public access to the activities of this Sustainability Subcommittee in accordance with the March 12th, 2020 Executive Order of Governor Baker. So the first item on our agenda is discussion items, the heating and cooling system. So basically what we're here to discuss today is to finalize the decision on our heating and cooling system for the project and to make a recommendation or vote on a recommendation to make to the SBC. We've been talking about, I think last time we met, we narrowed it down to either tier 2 or tier 3, both of which are geothermal systems with slight differences. So I am going to hand it over to Rob and he will walk us through his PowerPoint on this topic.
Great. Thanks, Maya. I just need to be allowed permission to share my screen.
Yo, do I need to do? Oh, John, can you do that? Can you let him? I don't think I can.
Figure it out right now. Did that do it?
Yep.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay. Can you see that? Can everybody see that?
Yep.
Okay. So yeah, it's pretty straightforward today. It's really one topic on our agenda, which is to review the comparison of tier 2 versus tier 3 on the geothermal system. So our engineers went back and updated the energy model to accommodate for 100% air conditioning and taking into consideration the airflow necessary for the improvements related to the COVID requirements and so forth. And so what we've arrived at is we've also updated the baseline to reflect an electric baseline system, whereas in the previous report, it was compared to a natural gas boiler. So now this is more of an apples to apples comparison. So you have your baseline system running at approximately 34.75 EUI. Tier 2, the EUI, as Chin had mentioned, is approximately 21 or 20.92 with energy cost savings percentage of 39.8 above the baseline. And tier 3 with an EUI of roughly 23.11 or a 33.5% energy cost savings over the baseline. So what this shows is that we're easily achieving the 20% above the energy model requirements and to achieve the 2% MSBA points. And so when we look at when we take a closer look at both of these options, here's sort of a comparison between the two. One thing I will note is that due to the 100% air conditioning, there is increased airflow, particularly for the gym and the cafeteria. And so what that has translated to is an increase in the number of geothermal wells to accommodate that additional capacity. So the load went from 350 tons to approximately 400 tons. And so that's translated into additional wells in both scenarios. This is listed as approximate. So in further discussions with our geothermal engineer, there are a number of, there's quite a bit of engineering that still needs to happen in design development phase where we get the exact loads. So the number of wells, could be less than this. It could drop down even to back down to 70 wells in this scenario, or 60 wells in this scenario. But there's quite a few factors involved that just can't be determined at this point in time. So this is what we are estimating for this updated system. The EUI's comparison here, the annual electrical costs. So in tier 2 is approximately 138,000 annual electrical costs versus 153. The capital costs have gone up a little bit on each of these due to the increased number of wells. And but there's approximately about $100,000 difference according to our cost estimator. Now that is slightly different than what was estimated by our engineer in the life cycle cost analysis. And again, one of the main reasons is that the mechanical engineer is looking at a very specific set of parameters in their study, whereas the cost estimator is looking at the bigger picture and other costs and elements that are taken into consideration when developing that cost estimate. So it's kind of an apples to oranges comparison in terms of what each entity is looking at for cost. So that's why there's a little bit of a discrepancy between what was estimated in the life cycle cost analysis versus our cost estimator that's looking at the overall project. And then in terms of the percentage above the baseline, we talked about 39.8 versus 33.5. And then, and just to reiterate, so these, the primary elements that are contributing to these costs, the capital cost comparison between these two, is that you've got more wells under tier 2 scenario, less wells under tier 3. However, there are additional costs associated with the electric boilers, with an increase in electrical service size, and the electrical service itself. So that's it in a nutshell. And then just following up on what Ken's question. So we do have a diesel generator as our emergency backup system. The electric boilers will not serve as an emergency backup system because it's all electric. And so if there is a power outage, the diesel generator would kick in. And what we are currently designing to is for that to provide emergency lighting, fire safety systems, heating systems, the elevator, kitchen refrigeration, communications and security systems, and maintaining a base temperature so that the building doesn't freeze. And so that's the overview of the presentation. Open to hearing questions. With us today, I also have, as I mentioned, in addition to Eric Ruoff, we also have Matt DeSalvo from GGD, our mechanical engineer, to help answer any questions people have.
I had a question, Roberto. What we're doing now all over the town, in Thurston in particular, and looking at the whole school system in general, is trying to, and Council on Aging and other buildings, is the cleanup and using, there's a device on the unit ventilators that actually is supposedly going to kill any viruses or live organisms that are in the air stream. And then HEPA filtration with a MERV 13. Has anything like that been considered or in these designs for the ventilation system?
Yeah, so right now we have 100% outside air. So what some of those systems that you're talking about, where someone's bringing in something to kind of help purify the air, is typically used in like a retrofit situation where they may not be getting 100% outside air brought into the building. And so that is an additional way of purifying. Included in our filtration system, we do have the MERV 13 or 14 filters already integrated into our HVAC system. And Matt, I don't know if you have any other comments beyond that.
Well, yeah, sometimes they put in conjunction with the filtration, they'll put in a, it's either ionization or a lighting system that kills the germs. It's not a big deal.
Tom, is that the iWave?
Yeah, well, iWave is one example, but there are also other examples where you use the infrared lights and not infrared, I forget the a lighting system.
UV.
UV light.
UVC,
Yeah,
UVC is typically the system that gets put in there. And those systems are more critical for if you are recirculating the room air, so that to avoid recirculating the viruses and germs. And we did not propose that in the building because of the fact that the building is capable of running 100% outside air. In fact, that the classroom wing and is designed to run 100% outside air no matter what under normal under operational when it's under normal operating the time, and only the cafeteria and gym are potentially having recirculated air. And
right now we're including 100% outside air for the cafeteria.
Capable of doing that. Yes.
Capable of doing that, yes. And that's actually one of the reasons why we've had to increase the tonnage from 350 to 400 is because it's transitioned to heating primary dominant situation where we're having to reheat this outside air more because we're using less, and so we're not recirculating as much indoor or mixing the indoor air as much, and so we've had to incorporate additional load to compensate for that heating of the air.
Well, that's all controllable, right? Because in zero degree weather, you're not going to want to bring in 100% outside air.
Right.
Well, just to clarify, for the group,
Pause people. Matt
maybe,
is in
maybe
the chat.
Matt, yeah, maybe Matt can add in some additional.
It appears from the
Yeah.
chat he's unable to speak.
no, so can everybody hear me now?
There he is.
Okay.
Okay, so under normal operation, the displacement systems will be in a mixed air condition with demand control ventilation to reduce outdoor air and save energy. Now, if we enter a period where we want to flush out the building, due to COVID or whatever else may occur, the units will be capable of, you go to the BMS front-end workstation and you set them to 100% outdoor air. So that means that they'll still deliver the same amount of air. The units just have increased heating and cooling capacities in order to deliver the design conditioned air at 100% outdoor air concentration. So it's just a capability built into the system. It would not be used in this manner under normal operating conditions.
Does this, just for a clarification, does the system recover heat from discharged air?
Yes, all the roof or all the air handling equipment will include exhaust energy recovery wheels. So all the air exhausted through the unit, that enthalpy is transferred to the incoming outdoor air.
And is that, from a design perspective, could you say there's a percentage of heat recovered, or that is? So I just want to clarify for the group that 100% fresh air bringing in on a cold day, it's not, you are recovering some heat from the discharged air.
Yes.
Matt, what's the efficiency?
you will actually recover more energy when bringing in 100% outdoor air because you'll be exhausting more air from the space, and that energy will be transferred to preheat or pre-cool the outdoor air.
So Matt, if the school district wanted to provide almost some redundancy, I guess, like a belts and suspenders approach, they could add the UV light to the each of the units, and where you might be, like, for example, if you have a situation where maybe you're not bringing in 100% outside air, but the school wants to make sure all of the air has UV light onto it to address that, that is an add-on element that you could integrate into each of the units. Is that correct?
Correct. Yeah, that could be integrated into any of the air handling units at this point, early on in design.
In typical operation of the system, what's the percentage of outdoor air being provided?
It varies per unit. It depends on the occupancy, the occupant density of the spaces served is primarily the driver of the ventilation rate with comparison to the total supply air. So the total supply air would be sized for the cooling load of the space, and the ventilation air, the outdoor air, would be sized for the occupant load of the spaces served. So it varies per space, per unit. You know, typically, it varies too much to even say a typical percentage, but you know, maybe 40% for a typical classroom unit.
Matt, is this a CO2 demand control tool that governs the amount of outside air versus the recirculated air?
Correct. And if we switched the building to 100% outdoor air, the demand ventilation control would be disabled because it would no longer be needed.
Hey, Matt, if you had 100% exchange air, so 100% fresh air is coming in, and you had the free air heaters engaged, let's say it was 0 degrees from January, how hot or how much, what's the delta in temperature rise that you get off the air heaters, the pre-air heaters?
Anywhere between 35 and 45 degrees. It's quite a bit. So 0 degree air, you could probably rise that up to something like 40 degrees on a typical unit.
So then you just have to get the other 20 degrees off that.
Correct.
Normally, the heat recovery wheel ranging from, say, mid to high 60% to low 70% in terms of the energy recovery for that's the general range. And then we have to look at the specific unit and the condition that it's running. But that's correct. The range that we typically see.
So I just wanted to clarify, so more for the recommendation to the school building committee and then the school committee, it sounds like the system is capable of 100% fresh air, but there will be obviously more energy usage if the system runs at 100%.
Correct, and that operation is not reflected in any of the energy modeling runs that we're doing currently.
Right, so as this committee makes a recommendation, I'm not sure the energy impact is known. So I think we just have to be careful about how it's presented, that it's capable of 100% fresh air. But if there's a mandate because of COVID that it runs at that, we probably need to do more study, it sounds.
Ideally, we'll never switch to this 100% outdoor airflow. It's more of a backup. And you can use that fact in your presentation.
So in that sense, is would it make sense for the committee to consider adding the UV light? If so that, you know, if that is a requirement, that's a way to save energy.
If you're asking me, I would say if you have the 100% outdoor air capability, the UV filter would be it wouldn't be a recommended add, because the UV filter in the 100% outdoor air situation would be cleaning the outdoor air, which really is it's a waste of money in some sense. If we were to remove the 100% outdoor air capability and keep all the units at 100 or at recirculation mode, then it would make sense to add the UV filters, the UV lights.
Matt, can't you add that UV filter light on the recirc line from the building before it gets to the
Yes.
outside air? And wouldn't that be
Yes,
efficient?
it would be efficient, yes. But
Because you're talking like little
primary-
kids that have colds all the time, not just COVID.
Oh, absolutely. But the primary recommendation by ASHRAE is fresh air. The more fresh air you get, the least amount of concentration of particulates in the space.
Right. So even if you had a 40% branch coming off from the recirc line, and you put a UV light on that, which would probably be normal, right? 60% out, 40% recycled.
Yeah,
How expensive is that?
it's I don't know off the top of my head. It's a few $1,000s per unit. Call it $2,500 per UV light. And
the cost
so
is
yeah,
not
and it-
huge, and we can certainly provide that as an ad, and that can be done easily. But that decision would apply to both tier 2 and tier 3, no matter what. And I think today's meeting, we need to make a decision on tier 2 and tier 3. And so I just want to be cognizant of the fact that we're at 10:14, and we do need to make, and we can make a complete separate presentation in terms of the COVID and the related issue. But right now that I've done enough of these projects to be able to say to you that what you have right now is effectively one of the best systems for from the health perspective of the school building, because you do have the option to get 100% outside air.
Right.
Right,
But
and the
I think it's a-
backfit the systems is no big deal either. If you ever had to later on, and I would presume that the COVID certainly should be well under control by the time this school starts to operate.
But I think it's an option we need to look at.
Yeah.
Well, sorry, Ken, what's an option we need to look at? The UV?
UV or ionization, there's two technologies. Yeah.
So
I
we'd
think-
add the UV for the recirculated air?
Yes.
The UVC system for this type of the way that they typically do is that if we want to do that from the beginning of the project, is that we will order a unit that has a UVC capacity in the unit, is what my understanding of this would be. And then that is, as of now, that's not a big deal at all to do that because we're so early in the project.
Because
later on, it will be harder and harder.
I guarantee it's going to come up either through a parent group or a teaching or the teachers. It's going to come up.
In this model that we're looking at with the costs, what is the fresh air versus recirculated air? What is it running at?
Matt, what costs are you referring to, capital or operational?
Either. I mean, I'm
Both.
assuming the capital wouldn't, I'm just trying to understand. I know that we have the capability of running at 100% fresh airflow, but this wasn't modeled at 100% fresh airflow,
So
correct?
right now, the capital costs we own on the job is effectively, the budget you have is covers the 100% outside air, and you can run it either with recirculation or 100% outside air. That's at your choice.
Right,
That you
right.
so that's a
Understood.
control. So capital cost doesn't make a difference as of now.
Right. I mean, I'm talking about the fact that it's much more expensive to run the system at 100% fresh airflow. So my question is, this 138,000 annual electrical costs, what is that percentage? What's the, is it 60/40? Is it?
Matt could answer that, I think.
So that's exactly what I was talking about earlier. It's different for every area and every unit. It's essentially 60/40. That's a fair representation, but you can't say yes, it's 60/40. It's different for each unit.
And it's 60 fresh air, 40 recirc?
I would say the
Or
other
the
way
opposite.
around.
So yeah, I think that's right. I just wanted to the system design looks great and it has the capabilities we need. It's just as there's conversation, like Ken's probably right, from the public about 100% fresh air and COVID and stuff, I think the energy utilization is going to change and the energy usage is going to change a lot if we're running at a higher outside air capacity.
The percentage, I think, Matt, correct me if I'm wrong, but under demand control ventilation system where it's measuring the CO2 levels in the room, that depending on the influx of students or people in that particular room will then dictate, how much more fresh air is brought in during different periods. So if you have 20 kids that suddenly come into a room, then everything's going to open up and bring in a lot of fresh air until those CO2 levels drop down to whatever the set point is, and then it'll slowly dial back the amount of fresh air coming into the space. Is that correct?
Correct. It's a constant moving target based on occupancy.
Yeah, and that's what's important to clarify when there's future discussions about, how much fresh air is in the building. That's the important.
There are CO2 monitors and then it's in the system.
Yes.
Yes.
So, and they affect the fresh air flow. Okay. Because that was actually had to be added at a lot of the other schools.
Okay. So getting back to the matter at hand.
Yeah, Rob, I have a question for you for the tier 2 matter at hand. Do you have any problem like adding in your drawing 2 flanges and a section of pipe where if we needed to add an electric boiler supplementary afterwards, we could have the space already designed in and the space in the piping
Matt?
at no cost?
Yeah, that's I mean, there would be a cost associated with the boilers, obviously, but it would be an easy tie-in, just a few valves, a couple valves and pipes for adding in the boilers as long as we have the room.
Okay, I want to caution on this, John, is that the plumbing end and then the from the HVAC engineer just simply having the point to add in that's no big deal at all. That is true. The hard part of adding an electric boiler, if we don't, is that the electric boiler would increase the power supply, the electric power supply, and then that is what complicates the matter. Is that we, at the moment, we are not planning to bring in additional power for the electric boiler. I think that's something we want.
Yeah, that's a good point.
I want to be careful of.
Yep, that's a good point.
Good point.
Okay, so I guess what I'm asking is, how hard would it be for you to, in the design phase, to put in 2 flanges and a dead pipe, not a dead pipe, but in the actual piping line, so you could put the boiler right below it, allow a little bit of space and the electrical connection or a future electrical connection for anything that we needed in the future?
I think the answer is that adding the flanges and so forth is not that difficult. It's fairly easy. The more difficult part is providing the increased electrical service to support that additional electric boiler that hadn't been planned for before.
Right. The transformer might have to be bigger.
Right.
And I would
For
think
example,
it would be,
and that could be expensive.
I think you would just put the you'd just go with tier 3. I think, right? I mean, the boiler itself is not that expensive.
Right. Hey guys, it's Ken. I mean, my feeling is I always like backup in all our current schools. We have 1, 2, or even 3 boilers. So if one goes down, I always have 2. I always have a backup. And to have the electric boiler in case something goes wrong with the heat pump system in the middle of winter, you're going to want that.
But the geothermal system is quite a bit different than what you are used to. I know what you're saying because I know that's historically the way that the hot water boilers are planned for. But with the wells, and correct me if I'm wrong, Matt, but with the wells, you have 70 or 80 wells, and each one has its own pump. So if something went wrong with one, you still have other ones to support. And Matt, if you want to just jump on that and respond.
So there's no scenario where the heat pump system would go down?
There could be a scenario, yes. There could be a scenario, it could be a series of events that cause, a series of system failures, pumps and valves that could cause the heat pump to go down, the heat recovery chiller. But I would just like to say that the electric boilers would not be sized for complete backup of the heating system, or they're not currently sized for complete backup. They're, they're sized for about 45% of the heating load.
Matt, I want to interrupt for a second. Is that I think can you describe in the system roughly that we have the wells that's outside of the building, how many pumps that are in parallel so that they only come on when they need it? Like, is it like a 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 inside of the building?
Yeah, it's just 2 base-mounted pumps that would rotate based on duty cycle to circulate the water through all of the wells.
Okay, and then how many heat exchange do you have?
So there are in tier 2, I think it's 5 70-ton heat recovery chillers. So there's a bit of redundancy there.
So where I'm going, Ken, is that the system is divided into that you have 2 pumps that are sized to alternate, so that if one of them goes down, you still have the other pump, and then you have 5 heat exchange chillers. Basically, that's the way I kind of think about it. That's what makes either hot water or cold water to circulate around the building, and then there's you don't have the kind similar to the way that the buildings have multiple boilers, that you have multiple units in the event that one unit is down or needs service, that you do not you still have enough capacity unless you are at the coldest design day. And then so the way that tier 2 is designed has a similar kind of redundancy as normal building system, so that way you don't lose one equipment and then completely lose the capacity to whenever time of the year is.
All right. So the building will have 2 main pumps. Is that what I'm hearing?
Correct.
All right. Obviously you run one at a time? They alternate back and forth, so one's always?
Yes.
Okay. Does it make sense to put a 3rd one in? I just like backup.
What about a temporary if something catastrophic happened, what about a temporary boiler with a generator? How does that system work like that in this tier 2?
The tier 2 right now, that as long as you still have the boiler, not boiler, as long as you have the pumps and then you have the heat exchange that's either making hot or cold water, you can run the building, and then just a question of how much, Matt, what's the total capacity of the heat exchange versus the need? Do you have, is it designed similar to boiler that you have like 120% when you add all the units, so that when you lose one, you're still okay kind of scenario, or how is that?
Yes. Yeah, there is about a 20% overage between the electric boilers and the well field size.
Okay.
So there is a redundant portion.
So Ken, this is no different in terms of the percentage redundancy as, say, a two boiler system that you have in some of your building. And the difference is that instead of boiler, you have these the geothermal system that are slightly different.
Okay.
Yeah, so just to clarify, Matt, the electric boiler is really just replacing wells. It's not providing any sort of a backup to the, it's not replacing
Correct.
the pumps or the chillers or anything like that.
Correct.
So it makes no sense to even install an electric boiler.
That is, I think that is the recommendation we are arriving at.
Hey, what's the design coldest day?
For Westwood, let me see.
You don't have
3
these facts and
degrees.
figures right off the top of your head, Matt?
No, I got the narrative right here. So that comes from historical data that is published by ASHRAE on I think it's a bi-yearly basis.
Sorry, what did you say, Matt? 3?
Yes, 3 degrees dry bulb in the winter, design day.
So what happens if the week, like 2 years ago, it was minus 5 to 10 degrees for a week?
So you would, at a full building occupancy,
A normal
less
school
than
day.
Yep. So less than 3 degrees, you would expect to see less than 72 degrees in some of the spaces.
When you say less than, I mean everything below 72 is less than.
Correct. So I mean, it would vary with the
40?
space and the occupancy load. No.
So,
No.
so
What does code require?
that's what the code requires, the design day, and which is by historic data. And so this is you will use the same system no matter whether you use electric boiler, gas boiler, or whatever boiler that you use. That part is the same in terms of the code. So that does, we are not designing anything different. And Matt, if I'm stating that wrong, please correct that. And the difference is that if you want to design a larger system, then the engineer can do that. But also keep in mind that what Matt just said is that right now your system has somewhere around 20% of beyond the code minimum required, so that in order to have some redundancy in the system. So you are actually, at the moment, you are actually designed to the code requirement plus 20% spare.
How does that relate with temperature is what I'm saying. I mean,
Yeah, so on a minus 10 degree day, you would not expect every room to be at the design heating set point of 72 degrees.
but I would expect them all to be above 65 degrees.
I mean, without running the calculations, I think that we could assume that it would be something like that. Yeah, 65 degrees, but
If the room's at 65, my phone's going to be ringing off the hook.
Yeah. So
well,
I'm
if
looking,
it's minus 10, I think everybody has a different expectation as to what's in the building.
so I'm looking at the clock and it's 10:30. Do we need to, I know we wanted to make a recommendation. Do we need to continue this discussion? I mean, I don't know if anyone's ready to, I don't know. What do people think?
I'm in favor of tier 2.
I'd be ready to vote for 2.
I have another question though on the generator, and I may have missed this. Why are we going diesel and not gas?
So the generator that diesel generator is the standard generator, and if we want to go with gas, we will have to get the local fire department approval on the use of gas generator, and we can certainly approach the fire department to ask for the permission.
Yeah, I mean, I would.
Are you
prefer
talking about
gas as-
natural gas, or are you talking about
Natural
like
gas,
propane?
natural gas.
I would
Natural
prefer
gas.
to go natural gas and have to worry about whether the diesel tank is full when we actually need it.
I mean, the natural gas approach brings in additional costs. Now, you know, because up to now we've eliminated the natural gas pipeline coming into the site. So that's an additional cost that we would need to account for.
Do we even know if the gas is in the street there?
Yeah, it is because the building is handling the service by gas. I
It
had it
is
brought
gas
in a few
fired,
years
okay.
ago.
Okay.
On other projects, we've had to use diesel because gas could be disrupted and you wouldn't, you know, if it was an emergency backup, is that not accurate or?
That is the reason why diesel is the standard default generator fuel, and natural gas is allowed only if the local official would sign off on it. And that is exactly the reason that, because every so often that you do have a natural gas disruption event, and that then you don't have the generator backup in that when that happens.
We have natural gas. We have natural gas here at the high school that they signed off on, so I wouldn't.
Then it sounds like then we would be able to do the same. And yes, that would be a possibility. That would be possible. And as Rob says, it would change we would require to bring in the gas line. And again, this is why we're doing this right now, so that we understand what exactly will be in the building, and then capture all the costs.
Can I make a suggestion? I think I'd like to schedule, if everyone's okay with it, another meeting and I think we can vote on this tier 2, tier 3 today, because I know you need that direction. I don't think we need to make a decision on diesel versus gas today. And I don't think we can,
Right.
because I'd like to know how much it would cost to bring the gas line to the property, since we weren't planning on doing that. So maybe we have another meeting where we discuss 1, diesel versus gas for the generator, and 2, we talk about net zero energy and the capability of the school to achieve that. And I think, Tom, you know, I think you are going to look into that, and I'd like Eric on for that call as well, for that meeting as well, if that's okay. Is anyone object? Go ahead.
Would you also add the UVC system into the HVAC unit?
The UV system?
I
UVC.
think it would be more of a general, HVAC system discussion in general, and we can add some sub bullets of that people have an interest in discussing. But I think it sounds to me like we should have an overview of the HVAC system that's planned and the other options that are available to go with it.
Okay. Yep. Is that okay with everyone that we have another meeting?
Sure.
Okay. Okay, does anyone have any more discussion just on tier 2 versus tier 3? Seems like we're ready. I hope we have a quorum. Hang on.
But I just wanted to clarify, I think Chin mentioned, but it sounds like the recommendation from the design team is tier 2. Is that correct?
Right.
So,
Yes.
yes, so we're
the
set
F.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yeah, I think we still have Lemma on the phone, right? I can't see with the
Yeah,
presentation.
she's there.
Okay.
Yep, I'm here.
I just want to make sure we have a quorum for the vote, because Tony had to drop off as well and Nancy isn't on. But I think we do. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 people, and we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 here. So yeah, we're good. Okay, so is there any more discussion on tier 2 versus tier 3?
I just didn't hear the answer to my question. Rob, is that correct that the recommendation from your team is tier 2?
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. Anything else? Nope. All right, well, why don't we take a vote? So I need a motion. I guess we're gonna, we need a motion to go along with the architect's recommendation of a tier 2 geothermal heating system.
I'll make a recommendation that we go with the tier 2 system.
Second,
Okay, I'm gonna do a roll call. Ken Aries,
Yes.
Brian Baer,
Yes.
John Cummings,
yes.
Lema Jean-Baptiste,
Yes.
and I vote yes. So we are recommending to the SBC that we do a tier 2 system. We also need to approve the subcommittee meeting minutes of August 18th, 2020. Can I get a motion to approve those?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Nope. Okay. Roll call. Ken,
Yes.
Brian,
Yes.
John,
Yes.
Lemma,
Yes.
and I am a yes. All right. Motion is carried. Okay. Is there any new business?
Just that
Yeah.
new meeting.
Yep.
Yeah, I just have a question on the new meeting. Is this,
Mhm.
I think this is the appropriate group for that, but is it also the full SBC that should be involved?
So we certainly, I was, so it's a good point, Brian. We can either have the initial discussion here where, you know, I know Tom's going to do a little research and Eric has also provided his opinion. We can either talk about that and then present that to the SBC, or we can have this discussion at the SBC meeting next Thursday.
I'm just thinking of the COVID issues and fresh air issues and all that are really kind of school committee issues too. Is that not correct?
You mean, are you talking about the net zero energy or are you talking about the HVAC?
HVAC system and, you know.
Yeah, so I think, so the HVAC issue, I think so the SBC is comprised of all 5 school committee members. So they're already on that committee. I do think the SBC would benefit particularly with some guidance from this group because I think they're looking to this group to look, you know, to address these issues. Now, I could be off base, but I don't know. What do you guys think?
I think, Maya, my take on it is that there's a lot to learn about this, and that maybe by having a pre-meeting with this group, we filter through and we learn some of the key issues. So it might help us, you know, navigate that conversation in the larger group in a more efficient way. Even though we should, you know, I don't object to bringing it up to the full group, but I think we'll need to be informed and then navigate that well.
I would agree with that. I'm just foreseeing that if the SBC, if somehow there's additional requirements put on the design team at a later date that, you know, are not understood early.
So I sort of, at the moment, the way the system is designed is that the system is designed to, that it's capable of operating either with recirculating air or 100% outside air. And that is a choice of the control. So think of it as sort of like a dial that you can go back and forth on. And that doesn't change the cost of the project and or design. That just simply control that you can do Ken or whoever has access to that can do it on moment's notice, whenever, once it's installed. The cost and the design piece primarily is on the UVC. And again, if you decide to do UVC at a later date, that's also possible, but the only decision is that do we want to instruct the design team to include the UVC system in the initial design. And we could actually get the number within a very short time because I was trying to look for it, but I couldn't find it. That GGD has a sort of a per square foot number that they can give you a degree of magnitude that it will cost X if we add that in there right now. And that's about the only thing that you really have to decide now. As far as operationally, whether you want to run it more energy efficient or more or you want to run it 100% outside air for a healthier building, that's a separate conversation that can take place whenever you choose to.
Yeah, well put. I think we should go that way, Jen. I like that.
Mhm.
So the
So
only
it
the
sounds like-
UVC is the only thing you have to make a decision.
Yep.
Okay.
I also would value, by the way, for the next conversation about UVC, I've heard that they are, like installation cost is one aspect of it, but then running it appropriately, so calibrating it properly so that the light is hitting filters for the right duration of time, testing it for efficacy. I wonder about actual usage and the costs of operation and maintenance on that. So these are
UVC, one of the biggest issue on UVC system is that right now, my knowledge from GGD is that for the lack of better word, that you're actually getting a whole bunch of light bulbs that emits UVC lights inside of the ductwork.
Okay.
Those light bulbs last only about very short time, and that's where the cost comes in.
All right, I'd like to wrap this meeting up. I don't, let's leave that discussion for the next meeting. And I think it does make sense for this group to preview that before if there isn't this sense of urgency, meaning we have to decide by October 2nd on these issues, which it doesn't sound like there is, then let's let this group preview those issues, ask the questions, and then we can present it to the SBC, and with the idea that they may have more changes, more questions, more requirements. Does that work?
Yeah.
Yeah. The only thing I would add is, if we do need to be bringing in a natural gas line to the building, that is a significant added cost that we would want to integrate into our drawings when we go
Is
to
it possible? Can we get the cost prior to integrating it, right? Can you just sort of give, not now, but at the next meeting, just give us a ballpark cost of how much that would add to the project?
Sure.
Okay, I think that would be helpful.
Okay.
So for the next meeting, we'll talk about gas versus diesel, hopefully get a rough estimate of the additional cost of bringing in that gas line. We'll talk about the HVAC issues, including the UVC, and we'll talk about the net zero energy, and then we'll report all that back to the SBC. Does that work? That sound good?
Yep.
Okay. So I think the only thing, any other new business? Nope. All right. I think the only thing I need is a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Okay. Roll call. Ken.
Yes.
Brian.
Yes.
John.
Yes.
Lemma.
yes.
And I am a yes. So motion is carried and we are adjourned. Thank you, everyone. Sorry
Thank
we
you.
ran late. Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.